There we go. You have it there. Excellent. There are chunda. Okay, so I just wanted to show you the quote of what I said yesterday. It's from the DN29 Passadika Sutta. There are chunda, these four kinds of life devoted to pleasure that are entirely conducive to repulsion, to fading away, cessation, peace, realization, enlightenment. The four types of life devoted to pleasure. What are they? The four jhanas. So if devotees of other sects should say that the Buddhists are addicted to these four forms of pleasure seeking, they should be told, yes, for they'll be speaking correctly of you. Then some people might further ask you, what benefits can you expect from a life attached to these four forms of pleasure seeking? You should reply that they can expect only four fruits, four benefits: stream winning, once returning, non-returning, or full enlightenment. These are the benefits that you should expect from being attached to these four forms of pleasure seeking. Dignika 29. And that was actually quite surprising when I first saw it as a very young monk, because as many of you think that we're not supposed to have pleasure. Is that true? It must be very terrible. 48 years I've been a monk. If I didn't have any pleasure at all, I must be a really bad masochist. But that's not what I am. You've known me for all this time. This is the pleasures of the mind which the Buddha encouraged. Not the pleasures of the senses, but the pleasures of the mind. Okay, and this is one of the other of the beautiful suttas. It just happens to be underneath. I didn't really intend to mention the Majjhima Nikaya 64. That's the Nalakapana Sutta. And there the Buddha is saying to Ananda, there's one path only, Ananda, one way to the abandoning of the five basic fetters. You may know those as the lower fetters. It is impossible that anyone can understand or abandon these five basic fetters without relying on that path. No more than it is possible to cut out the hardwood from a tree without cutting through its bark and sapwood. Those of you who know trees, to get to the pith of the tree, the hardwood, there's no other way except cutting through the bark and the sapwood. What is that path? The four jhanas and the first three immaterial attainments. And it's a pretty sort of tough thing which the Buddha said there, because it was so clear and uncompromising. To cut through the five basic fetters, that makes you a non-returner. In other words, that when you pass away from this world, reborn in the pure abodes, and there, never come back to this world, be enlightened there, by practicing the four jhanas. And it also said, when you still do not experience these jhanas, the five hindrances, together with discontent and weariness, invade your mind and remain. But when you do experience a jhana, the five hindrances, discontent and weariness, do not invade your mind and remain. And that's just what I was talking about yesterday. So now I want to go down a bit further. until we got okay, can you go down a little bit until we get to Samyutta Nikaya 5631. Okay, I've got them. Okay, a bit further. Okay, stop. This is one of the statements which I really love. It's right at the bottom of the page there. Which do you think are greater? The few leaves that I hold in my hand, or all the leaves in the forest? Asked the Buddha. The leaves in the forest, came the obvious answer. Likewise, the things that I know but have not taught you are many, like the leaves in the forest, whereas the things that I have taught you are few, like the leaves in my hand. And the reason that I have not taught you these things is because they are irrelevant to the holy life and do not lead to enlightenment. Anyway, what I really wanted to talk about is what's right underneath that. So scroll down a bit until you get the gradual training. Here we go. And this is what I wanted to focus on today, the gradual training. Now, I think you often understand the way of Buddhism to enlightenment is the Eightfold Path. This is an alternative to the Eightfold Path. And if you look at it more clearly, you can see it's not a separate, different path to enlightenment, to freedom, but it's just the same path expressed in a different way. And the gradual training, for those of you who ever look at the Buddha's teachings, you'll find that this is repeated in many of the suttas in the Digha Nikaya and also the Majjhima Nikaya as well. The gradual training. So we'll talk about it first. And if you have any questions, please put your hand up. And please excuse me for looking at the left. It's just because I'm right-handed, so I can hold the microphone in my right hand and I can balance the computer on my left hand. That's the only reason why. I'm not trying to ignore you, honestly. The gradual training. Arising of the Buddha and Dhamma, first of all. A Buddha appears in the world, accomplished, fully awakened, perfect in true knowledge and conduct, well liberated, knower of the worlds. What does it mean, knower of the worlds? I mean, there's other worlds other than this one? Of course there are. There is not just the animal realm, there's the spirit realm, the ghost realm. And look, I'm going to just go on a tangent here because I don't know how many questions I've had from you about what happens when spirits come. People in Hong Kong are very concerned about spirits. And I must admit that these things, they do exist. And there's a certain type of spirit which is dangerous. And I've seen it. I have to be honest with you. And even here in Hong Kong, it's extremely dangerous. So that's why I want to warn everybody about this ghost. I first heard about it and saw it, or rather had it explained when I was in Thailand as a young monk. And it's called Penai Kuat, which translates roughly as a bottle ghost. The bottle ghost. And it possesses people. I've seen it possess people. As soon as it gets into your system, this particular spirit makes you speak in a very strange voice. You can't even walk in a straight line. And your character is very different than usual. And you've got to be very careful if you drive a car. I've seen so many accidents caused by that bottle ghost. I think you all figured out what that bottle ghost really is. You find it lives in bottles of whiskey, rum, vodka. That's why these particular drinks are called spirits. If you open them up and drink it, it possesses you. And you're speaking a really strange way. And you can't walk in a straight line. You can't drive a car with mindfulness. That's why those are the ghosts which are really dangerous. But other ghosts, I've been telling you that because I was a scientist, a physicist, it was one of the things I loved to investigate. What are ghosts? You know, some people like to climb mountains or do rock climbing, or they get motorbikes and they travel really fast. They don't mind scaring themselves, sometimes almost to death, doing these dangerous sports. So I don't know why people think that I'm weird, because, I used to like to investigate ghosts. It was just like an interesting way of finding out about the world. I also mentioned to you that I pursued this while I was a student at Cambridge University with people who were highly intelligent and people who had access to all these amazing devices and equipment. And one of those friends was this gentleman called Dr. Tony Cornell. And he had one of these amazing business cards. You may have a business card, that you're a member of Chinese University, Hong Kong, or you're a member of this corporation or that corporation. Dr. Tony Cornell had this business. I wish I'd have kept one of them. Amazing business card. He was the chief ghost hunter of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And it was true. He was the one, because, of his scientific credentials and his experience, he was elected, by the British Psychic Research Society to be the head of the ghost hunting part of that. And he used to tell me that whenever he would go to hunt a so-called haunting or a ghost, he would always take with him a professional magician. Because he said that a professional magician would be able to check whether this was just a fraud, a trick. Because the magician could see the tricks of the trade and say, this is not a real magician, this is somebody just making it up. But he said once you discounted all of these things which were made up, then what happens is what's left. You note down. You get people to say this really happened. Take photographs if you can, and get recordings if you can, because this is an important part of everybody's culture, not just Chinese culture, British culture, French culture, everybody's culture. They all want to know what happens with spirits, with ghosts and stuff. And as Buddhists, the first thing which I would say, and I've told some of you already, we have what we call the cosmology of Buddhism, the different realms of existence. You have the heaven realms. You have the human realm. And what's right below the human realm? Animal realm. Humans, that we do have more power than over the animals. Doesn't mean we're better. We have more power over them. And underneath the animal realm, that's where you find the ghost realm, spirit realm. It shows that we are located in a much more powerful realm. We do have more authority, if you like to call it that, more power and strength than any of these spirits. And I've told many of you already, if any of you do encounter a ghost or a spirit, number one, they cannot harm you. Number two, that if you don't want them to be there, you can always say, be firm, get out. You can't stay here. And they always leave as a result. They know that they can't mess around with you. You're more powerful than they are. Do you think that ghosts get scared? Have you ever seen a scared ghost? I have. They're terrified of monks in particular. They know we do have much more power than they have. So, but a lot of time, if you feel the ability is strong in you, there's no need to chase them away. Instead, what we do, we share merits with them. We try and bring up that perception, that memory of goodness inside of them. And if you can do that through either chanting or by thinking beautiful thoughts, being kind, then sometimes those spirits or those ghosts can recall something beautiful in their life. And that would be enough to give them rebirth, either back in this human realm or in a heavenly realm. So basically they don't become a ghost anymore. When they leave that realm and become a rebirth in another realm. So that's often how we deal with ghosts. But you have to be careful, because I still remember a story from this monk. Many of you may have seen him, the Dr. Kesri Dhammananda. And he told me once that nearby there was a haunting in Kuala Lumpur, and he went there to deal with it. It was successful. The ghost left that place. But then they asked him to go back again, because the ghost had left the place, the house where he did his chanting, but had just moved next door. And the neighbors complained. And because I'm being honest, this is what happened. And so he said, I had to go to every house in the street to do the ceremony and the chanting. So the ghost completely left the neighborhood. But number two, ghosts can be very, very kind. And I don't know why people are afraid of them. I don't know if I've told you about the tsunami ghost. It's a true story. This was after the tsunami many years ago in the town of Gradual, which is on the same sort of gulf where Phuket Island is. This Thai lady had a dream 1 or 2 days after the tsunami hit. She had a dream of this English girl, maybe about 18 or 19. And in the dream, as this Thai lady told it, this English girl came to her and said, in the dream, I'm dead. I'm dead. Please help me. And because it was a dream, she didn't run away. She was dreaming this. And she said, I was on Phi Island, which is one of the tourist resorts off the coast of Phuket. I was on Phi Island when the big wave hit. I am now dead. My body is now in one of these temples in Phuket Island, which were used as temporary morgues. He said, my mobile phone is on the bottom of the ocean, and my mother is trying to call me right now. please help me. And she said, what I would like you to do is call my mother, let her know that I'm dead, and ask her to give you permission to have my body cremated, do the ceremony for me. Buddhist funeral is fine. And then afterwards, ask my mum to come and pick up my ashes. But don't let her see me now or see my corpse. And it's all battered and bruised and slashed because of the force of the waves. And he said, here is my mother's telephone number. And then she woke up, this Thai lady. Now, one of the reasons why I think that ghost woke her up, because she was married to an Englishman. So she woke up her husband and said what she saw. And her husband said, that is a real London telephone number. Give it a try. And she was a Thai girl. I know Thai culture. She said, no way, I'm not going to call that. You call it for me. So her husband called that number. There was a reply. It was a real telephone number. And this woman answered the phone. And when she explained who was calling and why, or he explained who was calling and why, she said, yes, that's my daughter. On Phi Phi Island for a holiday, and now she's dead. She said, I knew she was dead. I could feel it in my heart, but thank you for telling me. Please do the service as she requested, and let me know when to come to Thailand to pick up her ashes. And then the next morning, I think that morning, they got in the car and they drove to Phuket. They drove to that monastery which she had seen. And there she saw this was one of the bodies in that monastery, just as she's seen it in the dream. Long blonde hair, but bruised, slashed, because of the waves hitting the rocks. She had no power to resist. So they got the funeral service done. And they rang up the mother, so you can come and collect the ashes, tomorrow or whatever. The mother came alone, picked up the ashes, did a lot of crying, and then got on the next plane to go back to London. And this, don't be sad, it's got a very happy ending, the story. When they got back to Krabi, that night, that Thai woman had another dream. And this time, it was the same girl they'd cremated, the one who came, help me, I'm dead. This time, she said it was like she'd been to a spa. Her hair had been all cleaned up. There's no sign of bruises or cuts on her body. She's wearing this beautiful dress. And she came to this Thai girl in a dream. Look what you've done to me. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I want to show my gratitude to you. And she gave that Thai girl some more numbers. And when she woke up, she remembered them. But they weren't a telephone number. You know what it was? Exactly. And they won a fortune. Ghosts are very good with lottery numbers. That's a true story. How can a ghost say thank you? And so if ever you see a ghost, don't run away yet. Ask for a lottery number and then run. But there's so many other beautiful things that they can do. Oh, you got a question? Go on, yeah.
These realms, we share physically the realm with the animals, but ghost and heavenly and Brahmic, where are they? Let me understand how they fit
Okay.
together.
These are known as mind-made realms. Where's your mind located? To show you where your mind is located, I'm going to ask you to be honest now. I want you to put up your right hand if you feel happy right now, left hand if you feel sad. So put up your hand, be honest, whichever it is, right hand happy, left hand sad. Now, with that hand, if you've got the right hand up, can you please point to that happiness for me? Where is it? If you're sad, where is it? Point to it. Are you imagining it? If you're angry, where is it? Where's it located? It's not located in your body. These are mind states. If you ever fall in love, where is that love located? You can't point to it because these things don't exist in the world. They exist in your mind, the mind-made realms. That's where ghosts live. That is why a ghost, somebody can die in England and they can reappear just a few seconds after they're dead here in Hong Kong, just to say goodbye to someone they love. And something which is beautiful about that. These are called mind-made realms. And that's one of the reasons why when you get to know what the mind is, you can understand that explanation very carefully, very clearly. When you die, sometimes these heaven realms. Sometimes I looked at the description of those realms and I thought there's something wrong like that with those descriptions. People living in palaces, people living in big houses with lots and lots of elephants, because that in that time when it was written was the sort of realm that people would love to live in. Does that mean that I have to live in a realm like that if I am a good person and die and go to heaven? No way. You make your heaven realm as you would want it, as you would like it. It's not there and then you just get reborn into it. You construct it, not with hands and hammers and chainsaws, but with your mind.
I have a question.
Okay, yeah.
It's the same. I mean, in this world, it's virtual. It's not real. It's also mind-made.
This world is
I mean,
mind made.
when you press the button.
Yeah, this present world is much more solid, which is why we can relate. What you see in this world, I can see too. What you hear, I can hear. It's much more fixed than these heavenly or spiritual realms. Does that make sense? That's why we can compare. That's why we have aircraft, and I know when the aircraft moves, it's going to Hong Kong, and it makes life much more organized. Those spiritual realms are much more difficult. But you create your realm where you want to get reborn into. Even those hell realms. And even the animal realms are just so close to us. But anyway, these are what we call the mind-made realms. And especially for the spirits, what about the heavenly beings? Are they close to us? And the answer, of course, is yes. Have you ever seen a heavenly being? a deva. Well done, you are nodding your head. Excellent. They do exist, and sometimes they come down if you like, they come into this earth, assume a body to assist people. Rare, but it does happen. And I think that I don't know when was the last time I told the story of that monk who wanted to ordain and got to the temple too early. Some of you know that. That was an amazing story because I'll just do it in brief. This Westerner, after doing Peace Corps work in Thailand, wanted to become a monk, didn't know what to do. Somebody told him just go off to Wat Bhutan in Thailand, and he went there really early. It was all closed up, didn't know what to do. And this Thai man came up to him, spoke in perfect English. What are you doing? He said, I want to be a monk. He said, you come too early, but don't worry. I've got the keys. I'll let you in. And so he opened this metal gate. And once he opened the metal gate, he took this American inside, turned on the electric lights in the main temple, opened the door of the main temple, and gave him this guided tour, especially of the paintings, the murals inside Wat Bhutan's main temple. And he said that I know this monk. Actually, I know everything about this story. It's really true. Anyway, they gave him the tour of the temple and all these murals on the wall, painting at that time, about 150 years ago. And time flew past. They will help you. I'll lock up. That's what this Westerner did. And once this Westerner went out, exactly as he was told, the monk came out and asked, I want to become a monk, please help. He said, just wait here. When I come back from arms round, I'll take you inside. And they started the long process of training this American in what chanting to do and what rules he needs to follow to become a monk. But then what happened was that the monk who was supposed to be training this American couldn't really speak English clearly. And so the candidate, the American, asked, can I have a better monk to train me to be a monk? I don't understand what this monk is actually saying a lot of the time. And they said, this is the best English speaker in the whole of Wat Bhutan, the whole of the monastery. And then he said, what about that temple attendant who met me in the first morning and let me inside? What temple attendant? The one who opened that gate. You can't go through that gate. That is the royal gate. Only members of the royal family can go through that gate. And because I lived in Thailand for such a long time, I noticed that is true. I'm a senior monk now. Not even I could walk through that gate. It's reserved for the royal family. And they straight away, this was really strange. So they took this American to see the abbot. And the abbot was listening to him. And then the abbot said, stop. Please bring in the secretary. We need to record this. So the secretary wrote it all down. You cannot enter that way. Not even the abbot knows the story of all those murals, where it was painted, how it was painted. They usually painted those because somebody died tragically and somebody wanted to sponsor sort of that mural. And once it was all recorded, they asked this American, what did that layman look like? And at that, the American, I don't know. He said something like, they all look the same. And then he said, Please give me some detail what he looked like. And then the poor American was really challenged. So he was just scratching his head and he looked around and he froze. It was him. That was him. Had a portrait of this gentleman on the wall. Because this gentleman had sponsored that building of that monastery about 150 years ago. It was King Rama IV. And if you know the reverence people have for the royal family in Thailand, that was huge. There was no other way of explaining it. That's who the American saw. The American eventually ordained, spent a few years up in the northeast of Thailand, and then went over to the United States. And that story is in the history book of that temple, Wat Bhawan. It was real. That's why that man could open that door. He was a former king. They can go through the royal gates. A heavenly being helping a man ordained as a monk. That's what heavenly beings would do. That's a lovely story and real. Anyway, do you want more stories like that, or should I go back to the class? I know it's more entertaining than the suttas. But anyway, we'll carry on a bit. Oh, goodness. Sorry, Okay. Uh-oh. When this slips, I lose my place. I think maybe the heavenly being stopped me from getting back into the word of the Buddha. There we go. Okay, good. The gradual training. Please excuse me. I pressed the wrong button and then I have to go back again. Huh? Oh, come off it. Here we go. The gradual training. A Buddha appears in the world. So I said this already, but... Sorry? Loka we do, yeah. Know of the worlds. Incomparable teacher of those who can be taught. You know, as a teacher myself, I kind of love that statement. Incomparable teacher of those who can be taught. Even the Buddha could not teach everybody. So if I find some disciples who are really difficult to teach, that gives me so much feeling of I'm not incompetent. Even the Buddha couldn't teach some people. Teacher of gods and humans, the awakened one, I call it the master, the Bhagawa. With his own direct knowledge, he has realized this universe with its gods, this world with all its being, and he makes it known to others. Did the Buddha really understand the universe? You know, sometimes as a physicist, I sometimes wonder when the Buddha says that some beings, you know, through the powers of levitation, that's what he was saying, could actually go into space. And he describes space as where the sun and moon shine not. So far away that you can't basically see the sun or see the moon. He realizes this universe with its gods, this world with all its beings. He makes it known to others. Now, more importantly, he teaches the Dhamma, and I love this one, good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. with the right meaning and phrasing, he reveals a perfectly complete and pure spiritual life. So first of all, the Buddha appears in the world. Then confidence. You hear that Dhamma. On hearing that Dhamma, you acquire faith in the Buddha. Possessing that faith, you consider thus, household life is troublesome and busy. Is it busy? Life as a monastic is free and relaxed. Sometimes it is, not always. I'm being honest. It is not easy while living in a house to lead the holy life utterly perfect and pure. Suppose I shave off my hair, put on the orange robe, and go forth from the worldly life into a monastery. On a later occasion, having considered that, you're giving away all your wealth, abandoning your circle of relations and friends. You shave off your hair, put on the orange robe, and go forth from the home life into the monastic life. That's the confidence. You get faith in the Buddha's path. Then the virtue. Now this, I love telling you this. This is how monks are supposed to behave, nuns as well. When you have gone forth, you train in a monastic way of life. You abstain from killing living beings, with rod and weapon laid aside. Conscientious, merciful, you live compassionate to all living beings. You abstain from taking what is not given, taking only what is given, wanting only what is given. By not stealing, you abide in purity. You abstain from all sexual activity, living apart from others. You abstain from the lay practice of sexual intercourse. You abstain from false speech. You speak only the truth, are trustworthy and reliable. You are no deceiver of the world. You abstain from divisive speech. You do not tell tales in order to divide people, but you are one who reunites those who are divided, a promoter of friendships, who enjoys harmony, rejoices in harmony, delights in harmony, a speaker of words that promote harmony. You abstain from harsh speech. You speak only words that are gentle, pleasing to the ear, and lovable. Words that go to the heart, are courteous, desired by the many, and agreeable to the many. You abstain from useless speech. You speak at the proper time, speak what is truthful, speak on what is beneficial, speak on the Dharma and the training at the proper time. You speak words that are worth treasuring, authoritative, succinct and beneficial. You abstain from injuring seeds and plants. You practice eating only in the morning, abstaining from eating at night and outside the proper time. You abstain from dancing, singing, music, and movies. You abstain from wearing adornments, fragrances, and cosmetics. You abstain from using luxurious furnishings. You abstain from accepting money. You abstain from accepting raw grains and raw meat. You abstain from accepting servants and slaves. You abstain from accepting livestock. You abstain from accepting fields and land. You abstain from going on errands and running messages. You abstain from buying and selling. You abstain from practicing fraud. You abstain from accepting bribes, deceiving, defrauding, and trickery. You abstain from wounding, murdering, imprisoning, extortion, plunder, and violence. That's a basic summary of how a monk should behave. And none too. Any questions on that? Contentment. That's like your virtue, your precepts. Now, contentment. You become content with patched robes to protect your body, and with alms food to maintain your stomach. And wherever you go, you travel taking only these with you, just as the bird, wherever it goes, flies with its wings as its only burden. You know, that inspired me so much when I read it. I always tried to make sure if I come to Hong Kong or go anywhere, I don't take lots of suitcases. Think, I don't know, you see me when I arrive. Many of you pick me up at the airport. Where were my suitcases? What did I have as my baggage? It's this yarn, this shoulder bag, which you see. To try and be like a bird who flies with the weight of only their wings. Have you ever seen a bird migrating with a backpack? And they have a wonderful time like that. You know, sometimes you go on these long trips, you know, over to Europe or United States. And then at the customs, people ask, "Where is your baggage, sir?" I said, "This is all I have. I'm a monk." And they may not understand Buddhism at all, but they see that and they say, "Ah, yes, well done." And they don't even want to look inside, see what's inside the bag. "Please go through, sir." Because they do respect that there is some people who do practice simplicity and travel with so little. I don't need to have a change of clothes, so I don't follow fashion. Anyway. So when you follow this noble virtue and contentment, you experience within yourself a delightful bliss, the joy of being blameless. That's Ajahn Sutta, one of the first happinesses which you have when you live a moral life. Strange that some people feel that monastic life is just torture. If you practice it properly, you have the joy of being blameless. Not much to worry about. And naturally, that gives you a lot of energy. Next, restraint of the senses. When you see an object, you do not let yourself get sucked in by the marks and features that generate defilements. Since if you left the faculty of sight unrestrained, unskillful states of wanting and aversion would afflict you. Instead, you practice wisdom when seeing. You guard the faculty of sight, and you undertake the restraint of sight. And to make it quite clear to you, and being like my personal experience, I was a young man when I became a monk. I was a heterosexual. I had girlfriends at university, only one at a time. When I say girlfriends, I wasn't wealthy enough to do it at a time. But when I became a monk, many people used to tell me that as a young monk in Thailand, a Westerner especially, and if I let people know I had a really good degree in theoretical physics from Cambridge, that was a very good prospect, you know, for one of the local girls. And many of the monks there, actually, when they went into northeast Thailand, they didn't have to worry about the wild animals like tigers. You know what's coming next, don't you? More monks got eaten up by Thai girls than tigers. So, you know, you had to deal with your, you know, naturally occurring lust. So, you know what I did? I read this. You don't get sucked in by the marks and features that generate defilements. This is not just trying to be demeaning to a woman. Always, when I saw a very beautiful woman come into our monastery, I would deliberately look for her pimples. I could always find one in her face. I'm not saying that because, you know, that you don't respect females, But I did that because I wanted to see some imperfection. And that took away all this fantasy of lust. And it worked for a long time until my meditation was so deep, no danger there at all. So that's what we do here. If you want to make sure you want a peaceful life, don't go looking at those parts of whatever you get attracted to, which are the most beautiful or the most delightful. Same with having heard a sound, noticed a smell, sensed a taste, felt a bodily feeling, even cognized something in the mind. You do not let yourself get sucked in by the marks and features that generate defilements. Since if you let the mind faculty unrestrained, unskillful states of wanting and aversion would afflict you. Instead, you practice wisdom with the mind. You guard the mind, and you undertake restraint of the mind. When you follow this noble restraint of the senses, you experience within yourself an even more delightful, the bliss, the joy of being unagitated. This is the second amount of bliss when you live a simple lifestyle. And basically, that nothing agitates you. It's not just, again, seeing, hearing, meditating, touching. It's also your thinking. Many of those years, especially as a young monk, you were prone to fantasies. When you ever had a fantasy about something, in a fantasy, you could always be the winner because you make the fantasy. It always comes out in your favor. It wasn't real. So what I used to do, if I had a fantasy, try and fast forward it. What happens next? Then what happens next? And what happens next? And what happens next? And in the end, if you fast forward any fantasy, it loses its promise and it disappears. That becomes restraint of the senses where you're peaceful, nothing agitating you. Clear comprehension. You act in full comprehension of the purpose when going forward and returning. Act in full comprehension of the purpose when looking ahead and looking away. What are you doing that for? Why do you move? When flexing and extending your limbs, when wearing your clothes and carrying things, you act in full comprehension of the purpose regarding eating, drinking, defecating and urinating, walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, being awake, talking and keeping silent. You can actually see that in the Hatthipadopama Sutta as well. The Sampajanya it's called. Most importantly, if you need to sleep, why you're sleeping, why you're walking, why you are standing, why you are eating. It doesn't tell you how much to eat or how long to sleep. Just understand what the purpose of this is for. When you understand the purpose of, say, sleeping, just to relax the body to keep it healthy. The same with the purpose of eating. And then meditation. When you have developed this noble virtue, this noble restraint of the sense faculties, this noble clear comprehension, then you go to a secluded dwelling place, such as the forest, the foot of a tree, a mountain, a ravine, a hillside cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, an open space, a heap of straw, or Novotel Hotel Hall Level 3. You go to a secluded dwelling place. This is secluded. No one else comes in here except us. Don't ever think you have to go to a deep forest. Sometimes places like this can be very helpful. You sit down, folding your legs crosswise, straightening the body, and establishing mindfulness as a priority. Now that is my translation, usually translated as establishing mindfulness in front of you. The Pali word is parimukham. It doesn't really make any sense to me, in front of me. In front of what? In front of my heart, in front of my nose, in front of my eyes. But it's one of those idioms of Pali. It means putting it first on the list, giving it priority. And this is one of the things I haven't said here yet, but it is so important to understand. Only when you have sufficient mindfulness, and mindfulness is established, only then can you watch things like the breath so easily. Beforehand, it's a struggle to watch. Abandoning wanting for the world of the five senses, you abide with the mind free from wanting. You purify your mind from desire. Abandoning aversion, you abide with a mind free from ill will, compassionate for the welfare of all living beings. And thus you purify the mind from aversion. Abandoning dullness and drowsiness, you abide with the mind free from dullness and drowsiness. Bright-minded, clearly comprehending, you purify the mind from dullness and drowsiness. Abandoning restlessness and remorse, you abide unagitated with a mind inwardly peaceful. You purify the mind from restlessness and remorse. Abandoning doubt, you abide having gone beyond doubt. Unperplexed about wholesome states, you purify the mind from doubt. What are those five things called? Good, five hindrances, yes. You purify the mind from the five hindrances. Then the jhanas. Having abandoned the five hindrances, totally free from the five senses, free from unwholesome states, you enter upon and abide in the first jhana, wherein the mind moves onto the objects and holds onto it, the object being joy and pleasure caused by being totally free from the five senses. Second jhana. When the mind stops moving onto the object and stops holding onto it, you enter upon and abide in the second jhana, which has trust in the object of bliss enough to let go of holding it, and unity of mind without any movement or holding, with joy and pleasure caused by perfect stillness. And that's my translation. And I can defend that to the death if anybody wants to argue with me about that translation. With the fading away of joy, you abide mindful and fully aware, experience the bliss purified from joy. You enter upon and abide in the third jhana, on account of which noble ones announce, one has a pleasant abiding indeed, who has such mindfulness and equanimity. And Buddha mentions that as a pretty accurate translation. Even in these jhanas, you have mindfulness. You don't abandon mindfulness. It's not some state where you just lose all your consciousness. Fourth jhana, having abandoned pleasure and pain, that's all this Vedana from the five senses, and with the disappearance of joy and grief, all Vedana from the sixth sense, except for equanimity. You enter upon and abide in the fourth jhana, which has only neutral Vedana remaining, just pure mindfulness with equanimity. That's called the gradual training. It's an alternative to the Eightfold Path, but it's just a different way of explaining the Eightfold Path. And you can see, it starts off with some faith, confidence in the Buddha. That's the similarity to right view. The virtue, coming from that right motivation, and then right speech, action, livelihood. And then contentment. This starts the restraint, first of all, with just your possessions, and then restraint of the senses. And to me, that is samayama, so-called right effort. So sometimes I translate that as right restraint. And then the mindfulness, and that's with the clear comprehension and meditation. And then the samadhi, the jhanas. A different way of looking at the Eightfold Path. And also, this is one and the same path, so it's a different way of understanding what this Eightfold Path is. And this is taught by the Buddha. So, it is now 3:30. I was going to can I just go a little bit over time? I won't tell any ghost stories, but what I will tell is if you go down a bit from the Anguttara, the last of those Anguttara passages, that's the Anguttara Nikaya, we have things called will. If you keep going down until you see the word will, it's 10.2. That's Anguttara Nikaya 10s, the second sutta. I think you will. There we go. The reason I just want to finish off with this, often I'll let you know that this whole practice is an automatic process. It's not up to you to strive to complete this process. It's when you stop interfering with it, it becomes a natural progression. This is how the Buddha taught. Meditators, sometimes they say monks, but it applies to everybody. Sometimes if it says monks, what about the nuns? This is for everybody. Please respect everybody. Laymen, lay women, monks, everybody. Meditators. When one is virtuous, one does not need to will, let me be free from regret. It is natural that one who is virtuous becomes free from regret. When one is free from regret, one does not need to will, let me be happy. That type of happiness is called pamuja. It is natural that one who is free from regret becomes happy. When one is happy, one does not need to will, let me be joyful. It is natural that one... Oh, there's a typo there. It is natural that one who is happy becomes joyful. When one is joyful, one does not need to will, let me be tranquil. It is natural that one who is joyful becomes tranquil. A little pause there. When you have that degree of a joy, it's easy to sit still. You have what's called kaya passaddhi and eventually citta passaddhi, the tranquility of the body. You don't need to move so much. You don't need to get up and go down again. That physical tranquility comes when you develop this joy. Remember, you don't really develop it, you just let it happen. Because from virtue, you don't need to will any of this. It's just a natural progression. When one is tranquil, one does not need to will, let me feel mental pleasure. It is natural that one who is tranquil experiences mental pleasure. When you're still, not many things are moving. It's a natural cause and effect process. When one experiences mental pleasure, one does not need to will, let me enter jhana. It is natural that one who experiences mental pleasure enters jhana. When one has experienced jhana, one does not need to will, let me see things as they really are. It is natural that one who has experienced jhana will see things as they truly are. When one sees things as they really are, one does not need to will, let me experience nibbida and fading away. Nibbida is seeing things which you really thought were important in this world. Then, yuck, why am I getting involved in that? It is natural that one who is virtuous, I need to update this because there's too many typos. The one who sees things as they really are. In natural, one who sees things they really are experiences nibbida and fading away. When one experiences nibbida and fading away, one does not need to will, let me realize liberation. It is natural that one who experiences nibbida and fading away realizes liberation. When I first saw this as a young monk, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi did a translation. And the title of that translation, Enlightenment is a Natural Process. One thing leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. You don't need to do it. You don't need to will it. It happens automatically. That's a wonderful thing to know. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to have lots of will. You don't even need to be fit and healthy. Once the process starts, you just can't stop it. It's beautiful. At least I think it's beautiful anyway. Enlightenment is a natural process. You know that sometimes when you hear these teachings, I should have warned you before you came here. Once you've heard some of these teachings, it's already too late for some of you. You can get enlightened whether you like it or not. Sorry. Not sorry at all. Many people have said that to me, that once you hear these teachings, they try to go away for a while. They always tend to come back. They can't forget them. There's something beautiful about them. Meaningful. Anyway, so thank you for listening. Sadhu, 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 sadhu. So now we carry on with the interviews, and later on, there's question time this evening. So I'm going to try and be quicker with the questions this evening, but we'll just see how it goes. Is that okay? Excellent. Okay, so see you all later.